Thank you, Anna Merel Kloosterman and Wybren van Haga. Thank you for joining me today. Anna, I would like to start with you. Could you tell the viewers your personal story and how you got to how you made contact with Wybren?
So my name is Merel Kloosterman. I'm 27 years old and I'm from the Netherlands. And I was vaccinated here by Moderna. And at some point, I was able to reach Parliament. And Wybren was the only politician who was willing to listen to my plea for help. And that's when we started to work together.
I
And
just ask you around what time did you reach out to Wybren?
it was early 2022. And yeah, that's when we started working together.
Yes. And
Yes.
I understand you took, we obviously have spoken before, and you had taken the Moderna vaccine, I understand, like you had two doses.
Yes, that's correct. 2 doses of Moderna.
And did you notice the adverse events that followed on quickly? If you could just tell us briefly what you experienced, and how you suffered from these shots?
Well, 2 weeks after the second shot, I started to have life-threatening edema in the face and also my legs. I ended up in the emergency room and, well, paralysis as well, a severe skin condition, among a lot of other symptoms. And it went on for quite some time.
Yes. And I'm just curious, how are you doing now, Anna? I mean, how has your recovery been?
Right now, I'm doing actually pretty good. So
It's good to
most people are not recovering from the jabs.
Yes, yes, of course. And many have died as well. Yeah. So Wybren, I understand you are a former Dutch parliamentarian and you also are the leader of the BVNL party in the Netherlands. Could you tell me a little bit about your personal story, your background, and obviously what you have been doing?
Yes, yes, of course. Well, first of all, of course, thanks for having us. And well, basically, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an engineer and an entrepreneur, and I really hate politics. But against all odds, I got drawn into politics because of all the silly government measures. And as an entrepreneur, it's almost impossible in the Netherlands to be an entrepreneur. The taxes are high, the rules and regulations are ridiculous. And so I went into politics. I've been a member of parliament for 6 years, first for the Liberal Party, but well, which used to be an entrepreneurs party, but I appeared to be the only entrepreneur in the whole Liberal Party, so they kicked me out. And so now we've got our own party, which is called BVNL, the Interest of the Netherlands. And yeah, we're trying to make life simpler for people who work hard and do their best. Yeah, I met Anna Merel at some point when I was still a bit liberal about the vaccines because they got pushed, and I felt that it got pushed too much, but I still felt that if you want to take the vaccine, fine, it's your body, your choice. But when I met Anna Merel, I was absolutely shocked. She's a beautiful lady, of course, but at that moment in time, she was not a beautiful lady at all. She was completely, well, I think you lost most of your hair. Your face was completely, well, red, and I believe you were partly, no, not really paralyzed, but there was a lot going on, and then I really thought, well, this is really weird because we've got this Minister of Health, and he was pushing COVID jabs left, right, and center, and he was telling all sorts of lies. They're really tested. If you take the shot, you can't get COVID anymore. You can't transmit it, and there are absolutely no side effects. And he was really saying that on camera. And of course, now it appears, well, it's proven that it's all one big lie and
Yeah.
that there are many side effects. And we've got hundreds of people in our association now. And I think Anna Merel will tell you more about that. Hundreds of people who are really damaged. And the government is also playing some really strange tricks with regards to the COVID injured people. Because, for instance, you get your your treatment paid if you declare that you've got long COVID instead of the fact that you're vaccine injured. And if you're
Wow.
vaccine injured, you don't get your treatment paid.
Wow.
So
So
it's
just to
absolutely
stop you
ridiculous.
there, Wybren, so people in the Netherlands, when they have been vaccine injured, they have to use the cover up, so to speak, of that they've got long COVID. They have to
Exactly. Yeah.
just uh, in order to get any compensation from the government. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yeah, I think Anna Merel can probably tell you
Wow,
more about that.
that's really
Yes.
interesting. Yes, yes, Anna, please step in. Yeah,
Yeah, they're not acknowledging that there's vaccine injury. So you have to say that you have long COVID to get any compensation.
wow, wow. And what kind of compensation would you get? What is there like a cap, like a maximum you can get? Is there a threshold that you need to pass depending on your sort of injuries?
Yeah, you need to fill out like a form and then you get like some medical help, and probably also financial compensation, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, right,
But if
right.
they're vaccine injured, they're like there's no help at all.
Yeah. Going back to the two of you meeting, Anna Merel, I'd like to know why you approached Wybren. Like, how did that? Why did you think I need to speak to him about this?
Because he was the only politician who was speaking out against the COVID measures. So yeah,
Okay. And so
Yeah,
Wybren
basically the
asked
whole
you,
whole the whole vaccine issue wasn't an issue at that moment in time. It was more against lockdowns,
right,
curfews, the closing of the schools,
I see.
mandatory face masks, that bullshit.
Yes. Yes. So Wybren, would you say you were the really one of the very few, or maybe the only parliamentarian at that time who was speaking out against these COVID policies?
Yes, at first, the first few months, I was the only one. And of course, everybody was in a panic. And I can sort of realize that when you're in a panic as a government, you do silly things. But in the beginning, I started with just asking really trivial questions like, if you want a lockdown, have you thought about the side effects? How many people are going to die, and how many are you going to save? Have you got a backup plan? What about the IC beds? Do you have enough capacity? Why are you closing the schools when children statistically are not at risk? But just really normal questions, and I got hated for it. But after a couple of months, there were several other parties who joined. So, but it never got more than maybe 10% of Parliament that was fighting against these measures. And so in the beginning, I was alone, and after a while, I got a few supporters.
I see. I see. Has there ever been an independent investigation into the government's COVID response in the
Yeah,
Netherlands?
that's a very interesting question because well, before I lost my seat in Parliament, I was a member of the preliminary COVID investigation. Well, how do you call it? Group, or they've got this parliamentary investigation. So this pre-parliamentarian investigation, that was a really nice group, and we made a report with some recommendations. We should get everything out in the open, and there should be a full investigation. And then this panel got cancelled because everybody was afraid that something would come out of it. And now they've got this parliamentary investigation group, and they are not investigating anything. They're just kicking the can down the road, and well, they're trying to answer the obvious questions like, well, how can we vaccinate more people next time? What are the lessons learned? Yeah, did we challenge the people working in healthcare too much? That sort of question. But of course, you want to know, was this a crime against humanity or not? And if people actually knew that they were going to kill more people by implementing these measures than they were going to save, if they knew that, they are actually they should be held accountable. Now, they should appear for a judge, and they should go to jail, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. I mean, what you're saying speaks volumes. Obviously, it's very similar to what's going on in the UK with our own COVID inquiry, which really is being a blatant whitewashing of
Yes.
an inquiry. It's that they're not asking the needed questions. They're not digging into anything. And it has been a platform of we should have locked down sooner, we should have locked down harder, and all of that. So it's really it's abysmal, really. Um,
Yes.
I wanted to talk to you. Just you mentioned how your panel got cancelled. Can you just speak a little bit into that?
Well, I think what they didn't realize when they opened up this panel, that there would be a majority of people in this on this panel who were reasonably skeptical
Okay.
with regards to the COVID measures, and also the chairman of this panel was Khadija Arif, which was the former chairman of Parliament. Um, she is from the Labour Party, and all the people in the Labour Party, of course, they were advocates of the COVID measures, and they thought that Khadija Arif would be similar. But of course, she's a Muslim, and a lot of Muslims in the Netherlands, I discovered, they they were on my side in the during the COVID pandemic,
Yeah.
and because of the fact that they confide in Allah and not in the government. So whatever the government is doing, closing their shops, trying to force all sorts of injections onto them, they just don't give a shit. They want to determine their own lives. So there's a lot of respect for the integrity of your body
Yeah.
or the freedom of the individual from the Muslim side. And so Khadija Arif was the chairman suddenly of this preliminary COVID inquiry panel. Um, and she said, well, I don't care what the question is we have to answer. We will form our own inquiry and we will get to the bottom of this. And then everybody was in shock. And so when we filed our final report, yeah, we got cancelled because, well, her party, the Labour Party, but also my old party, the Liberals, yeah, they didn't want to have any of that because the people who committed these crimes, they are still in power, so they want to keep their jobs, so they're not inclined to support any inquiry that will lead to them going to justice.
Yes. But when you say camp, would they censor you? Did they suspend funding for this panel? Like, how did you get cancelled?
Well, they just stopped the whole thing,
They
and
stopped
they
it.
said, yeah, and they said, well, we're not going on with this,
I
and
see. So
we're
they
we're
stopped
waiting. Yeah,
funding.
we're waiting for the next elections,
I
and
see.
after the elections, they formed a public inquiry, the COVID inquiry panel, and it was filled with,
Yes, I get it. Yeah. So basically like a sham inquiry.
of course, yeah,
Yes, of course.
whitewashing.
Yes. Um, I wanted to talk a bit about this foundation. I might pronounce it wrong. The Corona Shade Foundation. Anna Merel, and tell me a bit about how what that's about. Um, did you set it up together? If you could just share some details on that.
Yeah, we are actually both board members of the foundation. And the reason why we started this is because there is no help from the government to get any justice for vaccine in Europe, but also for the entrepreneurs who are damaged by the COVID policies. So we support entrepreneurs, employees, employers, healthcare organizations, professionals, individuals with vaccine injury, and those who have suffered due to delay of wrongful care. And we try to help gain recognition and to recover the damage that has been done by the government. So the foundation connects and unites people in the aftermath of the pandemic and works for compensation and justice. For example, we facilitate for the victims legal procedures and assist them also with government information requests. And we try to organize like for the interest group for like patients meetings And that's a little bit what we do. And we try to start also class actions for the entrepreneurs and for the vaccine cured. But it's pretty difficult to do that in the Netherlands.
Yes, because I mean, obviously, having spoken with you and Wouter Okema in the past, he's the forensic data analyst, and he does amazing findings, discoveries with how the data has been suppressed, covered up, has been actually deleted as well. A lot of COVID
Mm.
vaccine deaths have been removed. I think 40% of serious adverse events on the this is for the European Medicine Agency's database were systematically removed. So it's really shocking what's gone on in the Netherlands. And obviously, the Netherlands is not alone. I mean, many countries have done their own way, of suppressing the information. But even the excess deaths. I mean, it was actually researchers. Are you familiar with the study that got published in the BMJ? I think this was about last year. Um, Researchers from the Netherlands did a study on excess deaths, and they concluded that there were about 3 million excess deaths across 47 countries. And that study got censored, really. It was under retraction. It's sort of the integrity of the data got sort of there was a lot of backlash from it. And yeah, there's essentially it's being censored. Are you aware of that study?
Yes, I'm aware of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Uh,
there's still a lot of censorship in the Netherlands. Like, for example, last week there was a debate in parliament about the excess mortality, and
yes,
they blame everything except for the vaccine. They are
right.
still promoting it.
Yeah,
Yes,
the climate and the demographic change of the population,
yes.
anything but the COVID vaccine.
Yes, yes. I wanted to speak a bit about these class action lawsuits that Anna Merel, you started to talk about. And Wybren, could you pick up on this and what I know you've recently taken, your party has recently taken the Dutch state to court. This is to
Yes.
do with the COVID policies like the curfews and these secret OMT tapes. Could you talk to me about that?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Well, we're trying to get to the bottom of this, and we can do that through the Open Government Act, which is called the Wet Open Overheid in the Netherlands. So this Open Government Act is actually quite useful because it gives the power to the people to demand the government to be transparent, which they are not. Um, and a lot of people are doing these requests, but we've done, well, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12, but four of them have actually materialized in a court case. And what the government normally does, they lose the court cases, and the judge rules that they get a penalty if they don't open up, they don't provide the documents. But then they stipulate a penalty. Well, in our case, we just won one of these court cases, and they say, well, you have to open up, you have to provide all the documents, and you get a penalty of 100 euros a day if you don't give it, with a maximum of 7,500. So the government just pays the penalty, and it's all taxpayers' money. So that's
It's money, exactly. Doing like a hushing up the
exactly
crime.
it's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, so
Really.
there were two subjects that we took over which we took them to court, and the first one was the COVID-19 curfew. Um, Maybe you remember that Jeroen Pols and Willem Engel, the two activists, very very well known in the Netherlands, and they took the government to court over the curfew, the COVID-19 curfew, and they won. And then within 5 hours, the government managed to get an appeal, which is unheard of. I've never seen anything like that. So what we would like to know, and of course they went into well, they appealed and they appealed, and so we lost everything in the end.
So they
But
won
so
their
then,
appeal. The government won the appeal.
exactly, yes. So first of all, the first judge ruled that there was no reason for this COVID-19 curfew. It was not proportional. It would not have any impact on this so-called killer virus. Um, but nevertheless, the government won. And now we want to know based on the Open Government Act, what what communication has there been between the government and the judiciary? Because you should have a separation of powers.
Yeah.
And we suspect that this separation of powers after 15 years of Mark Rutte and his Liberal Party is completely gone. So we asked for all this communication. Of course, we were not given that, and they tried every trick in the book to prevent them from us having this communication. But now the judge has ruled, yes, you have to give all the communication between well, the government and the judiciary. Um,
Well, that's a big win for transparency, isn't it? I mean, it's
It
um,
is.
you're
we
fighting
have
with
we
trans.
have to see about that because, of course, there's a penalty involved, 100 euros a day with a maximum of 7,500. Our lawyer costs twice that. So I think the government will just spend taxpayers' money again and just. But anyway, maybe they will provide some of the communication. But what they normally do is you get two emails with complete nonsense communication and say,
Well,
well,
it's
yeah,
redacted, right?
yeah,
Redact.
we couldn't find any more.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the second case we brought to justice is the OMT recordings, the OMT tapes.
Could you just explain what that means, OMT? What
The
does that stand?
OMT is the outbreak management team, so
Okay,
it's a proper English word. And so this was a bunch of so-called scientists
I see.
who basically determined the whole lockdown, curfew, school closing, face mask scheme for a couple of years. And of course, we have always been told that we were following the science because the scientists would tell the government in these outbreak management team meetings that that you have to wear face masks and you have to close the schools because it's a killer virus on the run and we have to prevent people from dying. But we know because of the Robert Koch Institute files,
Yes.
where they had somebody just leaking everything,
Yeah.
that it wasn't science at all. It was politics. It was
Yeah.
just power mongering, power hungry politicians who overrid the scientists. So we suspect that, and these outbreak management team recordings they got preserved, so they're still there, but the government doesn't want to supply them,
Right.
and we suspect that yeah, there are some heated discussions there where probably the scientists, the virologists, and the professors in whatever, were telling the government, well, face masks are no good because it's these are aerosols and they don't prevent against a virus, and a lockdown will kill more people than you would save, and keeping children off of school is just horrible. It's just not. So if that has happened, and the ministers and the secretaries of state will actually be heard saying on these recordings that, we couldn't care what science thinks, but we are just going to instate this COVID-19 curfew, then we've got a pretty good case to bring them to court and to get them punished.
Yes.
And again, I've said this before. I think this has been a crime against humanity, and I think if we get the proof that these people knew what they were doing, then they should be locked up.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we had something similar in the UK. We had these government scientists. They were called SAGE, and we had behavioral scientists and modelers, and they were essentially steering the government for lockdowns and all the other COVID measures. Uh,
Yes.
but we have a lot of their early meetings. Was made accessible online, and I've dug into those as well. So at least there was a little bit of transparency early on. But obviously, you're saying the Netherlands, this was never published. It was never.
No, no, it's as silent as a grave, and there's nothing coming out of this government. And well, it makes you wonder what the cover up is. And
Yeah.
as long as the people who actually committed the crimes are still in power, you will not get to the bottom of it, and they will not open up. And
Yes. I
eh, with regards to the lockdowns, I mean, at some point, I can't remember when exactly, but the WHO even said, a short lockdown when there's a killer virus on the run is acceptable, but after that, it's not good. It's counterproductive. And still, I think we went into lockdown for 4 times, and we were the last country in the West to be in lockdown. And it had everything to do with elections, with polls. And so there wasn't a scientific um, argument to be made to stay in this horrible Orwellian time.
Yes, yes. And obviously it had catastrophic consequences, these lockdowns, the school closures, and all of this. I mean, it's you have, meta-analysis being done, just saying like the how they cost billions, and just obviously and many deaths as well. It's really, really appalling. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Dutch media. How is it? How is it in the Netherlands with, are there any stories coming to light with vaccine injuries, even your court case? How is that being reported in the mainstream media?
Not.
Not at all. Not
It's
at
not.
all.
So it's
No,
not.
you've got several independent news groups like the Unheard News is one. What are where you have the other paper, the Andere Krant. You've got Weltschmerz, which is you've got Black Box, but these are all sort of private media enterprises, and I mean, people in the resistance they watch it, but on the well, let's say your 9 o'clock news, nothing whatsoever. It's just absolutely horrible, and especially the old-fashioned papers. They've got so-called scientifical reporters, and they were that was just state propaganda that they were printing, and even at that point, but especially in hindsight, they were just lying everything together. It was just absolutely horrible, and they're still maintaining these lies, and so you wonder how it's become possible that both the government and the judiciary and the media are singing from the same song sheet, and
Yeah.
and and they're just feeding us lies.
Yeah. Do you get the general sense, just speaking to people, and obviously Anna Merel, please step in here, like what's the general sort of climate like now with, are people uh are they becoming more aware of these injuries, of how the government has failed, lied, covered up, essentially, all of this? What is the general mood of the public?
Well, they're complaining a lot, but they're not willing to take action. I think in the UK there was like a class action with 18,000 people were vaccine injured.
Yeah.
And for us, like getting 100 people together is really, really hard.
Is it because they just don't want to discuss it? They think they're going to get backlash. I mean, and also I wanted to speak to you about what has been the repercussions of you coming forward and being an advocate for the vaccine injured.
Losing a lot of people, getting censored.
When you say
Well,
losing a lot of people, like losing friends, what do you,
friends, family as well. There's still a lot of people I'm not talking to.
wow.
Yeah, they just removed me.
Yeah,
So it's
no,
still going
especially
on.
now because a lot of people think that you should shut up about COVID because it's long gone and let's put it to rest. And don't talk about people who are criminals or don't talk about the lockdowns and the curfew anymore because it's let bygones be bygones. But in the end of the day, there's still 240,000 entrepreneurs going bankrupt at the moment. And they've done this in a very fishy way because, they've given them an exempt on their tax payments and they've given them some support. But it has to be paid back. And of course, the previous government stipulated that it only had to be paid back starting, I believe, from the 1st of January 2025. So after they were gone. So now suddenly you get this tsunami of bankruptcies, and all these entrepreneurs are just going down the drain, and it's absolutely horrible, and nobody's taking any responsibility for it. And uh, but on the other hand, our association is in a bit of a bind trying to find these entrepreneurs, because when you're going bankrupt, you're not really in for, trying to get into a class action, putting in money and taking the government to court, because the government is always richer, it's got deeper pockets,
Yeah.
they've got more time, and these governments well, these entrepreneurs are just lying flat on their back. And it's the same a little bit for the vaccine injured, because if you're really ill, you don't have a lot of energy to go to court, and it's just very difficult.
Yes. Yes. I mean, this foundation that you've set up, I mean, how are you getting funding for it? And I don't know, like the logistics of just running that.
We are just asking for donations. That's the only way.
Yeah. I'll definitely put a link to your foundation when the
Yeah,
interview
please
up.
do. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would be
People
great.
donate, absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit, just this final ruling. I was just reading a bit about, again, back to the court case,
Yeah.
Wybren. Is it March 20th when there will be a final ruling?
Yes. So the first ruling was, well, I just told you, it was that they had to open up all the communication around the COVID-19 curfew. And the other court case about the OMT recordings, yeah, that stands for the 20th of March at the moment, but it will be delayed probably, because I believe the judge is going on a holiday. But nevertheless, time is on our side, and at some point the axe will fall.
Yes. Have others joined you, seeing that you've got a little bit of success, well, a victory really for transparency in these recent rulings? I mean, is it still just BVNL that's been the only party who's been driving this forward, or have others could have come alongside you to join and to help?
No, not at
Well,
all.
there's another
We,
foundation like
yeah, yeah,
Willem
yeah,
en
exactly.
Jeroen.
No, but with regards to political parties, we are the only one
Yeah.
going forward on this. But there's another foundation, which is Willem Engels and Jeroen Pols, and it's called Truth Around Virus, something Viruswaarheid. But they're in a bit of a bind, because their bank account was frozen and they can't do anything anymore.
Wow.
They're very well educated. They're very aggressive and very good. And of course, we're in close contact with them. And they were the ones to strike the first blow to the government with regards to this COVID-19 curfew. So they've done a hell of a job, but they're a bit
So
beaten up
essentially,
now.
they've been debanked, right?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That
Well,
is
that happens left, right, and center here. I mean, I can't open a bank account anymore. We're trying to.
wow. I was going to, that was been my next question to you. What about yourself? Have you, you know, being debanked and you're
Yeah, I've got one bank left,
right,
the ABN AMRO, which is, thank God, they're still willing to entertain me.
right.
But all the other banks, no go. And even to open a new bank account with the ABN AMRO, it's horrible. I've started 9 months ago to open a bank account for a different association to help entrepreneurs, and it's just, yeah. And after 9 months, I'm phoning them twice a week. Yeah, no, you're a politically exposed person. Yeah, it's really difficult. And who is the ultimate beneficiary owner? And yeah, who is this and who's that? And yeah, what will you do if people start criticizing your association? Like, I said, come on, it's a
Yeah,
bank account.
yes. That's a, when did you first start noticing this sort of backlash against you? Obviously you just discussed about the banking, but when did it all start?
Well, for me personally, the moment I started asking
Thinking
critical
the
questions,
question.
yes, and then at that moment in time, a lot of people, in a sort of hysterical way, socially moved away from us. And people, well, like Anna Merel just told you, you lose 90% of your social environment. It was a psychosis. It still is, and people. Matthias de Smet, maybe you know him, but
Yes,
he has written a book about that, the psychology of totalitarianism.
yes,
And you know, the people who have got the nerve to and the bravery to question these Orwellian situations against all odds and against the group, it's just 10%. And the other 90%, you know, they are running away with the herd. They're sheep, and they really want to cut the throats of the 10% because the 10% is really, you know, they are mavericks. They should be they should be hung, drowned, and quartered. It's just absolutely amazing. And I've in my life I've never experienced a collective psychosis like this before, but it's amazing. And you can suddenly you realize that what happened in the Second World War is, you know, it's all possible because yeah, people just don't dare to speak up anymore, and they just run with the group, and whatever the damages is, you know, you have to stay within this group think, otherwise you lose everything.
yes,
And it's very easily explained because, like Matthias de Smet says, you know, we used to live hundreds or thousands of years ago in groups, maybe maximum of 200 people. And, and you know, everything was catered for, and the men went hunting, and the women uh, cared for the children. But the worst punishment a person could get uh, was to be expelled from the group.
mm,
And you know, this phenomenon was very remarkable during this COVID episode. Nobody wanted to be expelled. Nobody wanted to be sent
well,
away.
we know how the vaccine injured got treated, right? They were, they were just completely, or anyone going against the vaccine, they were considered selfish, and killing others by not taking the vaccine. I mean, it's
Exactly.
just awful how they were
Well,
treated.
it went two ways. First, it was the people who wouldn't take the vaccine, they were criminals.
Yeah,
They were against the group.
yeah,
And then the people who took the vaccine and got vaccine injured, they were worse off even because they were treated like traitors by the people who didn't take the vaccine because they go, well, you took the vaccine, you've been stupid. But they also were seen as, you know, sort of whiners or you know, by the people who took the vaccine and didn't suffer any side effects. So this particular group of people who are vaccine injured, they've got nobody.
yes. And Emma Merel, I remember when we first spoke, you were saying how you felt gaslit on both sides. I
Yeah,
don't know.
you no longer belong to the group unvaccinated, but also not vaccinated. So
Yeah.
it's really, the gaslighting is coming from both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just wanted to just end with, obviously we've got Trump's recent win in the US, and we've got the appointment of RFK Jr. as head of the HHS. And he's obviously been so outspoken about, vaccine injuries. Do you see a bit of hope on the horizon, a bit of light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see a knock-on effect within, the Netherlands? If you would care to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, well, of course. I mean, this is the best that could have happened. You know, the biggest and most powerful country in the world suddenly turning back to their original status, to their core values. And I think Trump has done an immensely good job by making RFK the Minister of Health, and yeah, making America healthy again. Of course, will have some tremendous effects on us, but primarily on opening up this whole COVID pandemic box of Pandora, and hopefully, if people start going to jail in the United States, and people are sort of providing the transparency that we actually need about Pfizer, about Moderna, and about all the trials and the groups that were excluded, and they had the pregnant women that weren't excluded weren't included. I think the ball will roll very quickly to Europe. The problem, though, is that Europe is doubling down now, and all these semi-communists here, all the socialists, all the collectivists, I should call them, because if I talk about communism, then people get angry. But the collectivists, they think that America's gone completely bonkers,
Yeah.
and they're a bunch of idiots, and let's be more collectivistic here.
Yeah.
And then we'll survive. But I hope, I really hope that RFK uh, will set everything on fire and open everything up, and I hope that people here will, well, especially the mainstream media, will at least acknowledge and make sure that investigations will start.
But I also think we need to wait for America because right now people are not aware in the Netherlands, not at all. So yeah,
And these shots, I mean, just going back to the COVID shots, which they completely should be, there should be a halt, they should be completely removed. And I just wanted to ask, are they still they're still being administered, right?
Yes,
In, is everyone
yep,
yes,
still getting their boosters and all of this?
yep.
they're
And the
Yeah.
still
powder,
promoting it.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yeah, let's hope RFK Jr. just, there should be a complete halt on these. And I know many groups have been formed, like the North Group, who are saying, there's a lot of groups of medical professionals, scientists, doctors who are saying, these need to be halted immediately. They need to be pulled from the market. They are not vaccines. They never were. They were branded as, but it was really just to increase, uptake by branding them as vaccines when they are gene-based.
but basically the
Shot.
mRNA gene therapy was developed for people with an immune deficiency.
Yeah,
So it's a very specific group. For instance, people who had a stem cell transfusion, and they have got no immunity left, and then it's fine. But to vaccinate the whole lot, the whole population, that's just was out of order. There was no reason to do that at all, and I really hope they will stop it now.
and not only that, obviously, because for a while we've known they've been contaminated with DNA and sort of cancer-inducing genes as well in these shots. So has that come out in the Netherlands at all about the contamination factor?
Right, it's
Not in
been
the
on
mainstream
the
media.
so go ahead, Annemiel.
No, not in the mainstream media. Of course,
No,
it's discussed in the alternative media, but not mainstream.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, before we end the interviews, anything you both would like to add, please do so.
Yeah, well, one thing that's, I'm not sure whether that happens in other countries as well, but here, general practitioners are still prosecuted, and they were fined tremendous fines uh, because they believed in early treatment of COVID by administering, for instance, ivermectin or HCQ,
Yeah.
and these people are still being taken to court by the current government.
Wow. Yeah.
And you really wonder how it's possible that politicians with no clue whatsoever about medicine or healthcare, they actually they actually uh, thought that these doctors were not taking care of their patients. You've got the oath of Hippocrates, and
Yeah.
I've spoken to many doctors, and they say, I am an educated doctor. I try to save my patients. We've got this very famous GP, Rob Alens, who was on our ballot, um, and he got fined left, right, and center, and he was treating people with HCQ,
Yeah.
early treatment,
Yeah.
and none of his patients died.
Yeah.
And and then you get people in Parliament who think his license should be revoked.
Yeah.
And you really wonder what the arrogance, where the arrogance come from.
Yeah. I mean, hydroxychloroquine, obviously HCQ, we know it's been around for decades. It's a safe, they were treating it for malaria for
Yeah,
decades. We know the early treatment, there was many studies proving that it was effective for as early COVID treatment. But we have the backlash against that, and obviously ivermectin, it's like a blacklisting of all the other treatments just so these vaccines can get railroaded through. But going to HCQ, where there was a study done that I did get retracted, thank God, but it was all based on fabricated data. This is the infamous Lancet study
yes,
using Surgisphere's data completely fabricated, saying that it had more people died taking HCQ than the control arm, and it's just complete lies. And but still, still it didn't really change the dial, so to speak, because it was still being blacklisted. And like we said, this poor GP being taken to court, being fined for being administered, and obviously many doctors who are administering ivermectin, they fell into the same they got the same treatment by the government. It's really appalling, and they just wanted to save lives.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, but thank you so much, both of you, for talking with me today. Anna Merel, if there's something that you'd like to say before we leave, please.
Yeah, was one last thing. I would to take real action with the foundation. I would like to ask to all the entrepreneurs and vaccine endure to sign up through the website because yeah, to get justice in the Netherlands, the path is almost completely blocked, and the more people who come forward, the stronger we stand.
Great. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yep. Thank you
Great.
very much.